Archie, Kurt's opinion on presidential candidates. Ooh, here we go. RFKjr, Vivek, talking about Bitcoin and not really understanding how the system was designed. So I don't talk a lot about my own personal politics because I don't want them to matter. And I'm kind of apolitical. I'm kind of a secessionist, but not in a militant sense. Like I'm just kind of, I always say I don't like playing the game Monopoly, so I don't play Monopoly. Like when people say, hey, you want to come over and play Monopoly? It's like, nah, if you want to go out for a drink or something, some other time or do something, like I'll come play blackjack, but I don't really want to play Monopoly. So I just don't play. And this is the advice I give people about politics too. Like if you don't want to play the political game, or in my case, in some cases, like I don't necessarily consent to being governed and therefore I shouldn't play the game. It's a little tangential. I do not like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Now, I know that's a little controversial because a lot of people seem to really like him because of the COVID stuff. And I like him on the COVID stuff. I think he is good on that issue. I like his clarity of thought. I like his leadership. I don't think he's electable for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is his voice. His voice is damaged in some way. And I don't know the details as to why, but presidential elections are popularity contests. And, people really like, presidential candidates that talk tremendously, or you get the Joe Biden, the kind of squinty, lost guy. I don't know if I do a Joe Biden impression. I'm not going to practice live on the air, but RFK's got this like hyper gravel going on in his voice. Like it sounds like he has like a vocal cord like stuck in his, or like it's like it's twisted or something. He's very, very gravelly. And kind of beat up, but he is good on the COVID issue, and then that extrapolates out to other issues that he's good on. But ultimately, I mean, he's a Kennedy. First of all, like we were talking about, arguably the most shrewd, family in American politics, and so. He is a man whose father was assassinated and whose uncle were assassinated for trying to be independent-minded politicians. And so I think the fact that he is alive indicates that he is probably more in the Teddy Kennedy camp on a lot of things, and that he is likely some kind of controlled opposition character. And so, his politics on guns, not very good. His politics on, I'm a freedom guy, so he's a gun grabber. I don't like that about him. I've heard some of his stuff about, some of his surface level stuff because he's not getting real deep into things. So to bring it back to your question about Bitcoin, he talks about these things the way a lot of Republicans talk about these things. We've actually got a bunch of Republicans talking about like the Ripple thing. It's like, well, here's a big victory. And, it's Republicans trying to quote unquote look good on the economy because they're seen as like, hey, we're the adults when it comes to like your basic economic freedoms, like low taxes, lower spending, and that kind of thing. Most of which is a meme, by the way. Republicans tend to spend more money than Democrats once they get elected, but that's a different story. He's going to talk on a surface level about Bitcoin, much the same way as Vivek has. I think that's the right way to say that name. But when you hear their politics, it's surface level. I think an example I would give. So two things. I am kind of a gun guy. I carry. I go shooting semi regularly. I keep myself up to skill. Same thing with jiu-jitsu. I'm quite good at Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Like I understand mixed martial arts. I've coached it and all these things. Now, when I watch a movie and I see gunplay and martial arts, they look terrible to me. They handle the weapons poorly. They don't do realistic. They don't fight like people. They don't shoot like people. And it's because I'm something of, maybe expert is pushing it a little bit, but I know a lot more than most people. And so when I watch most movies, I say, oh, you're handling that weapon wrong. Your footwork's bad. Hey, you would have gotten punched by anybody that knows how to punch. Like these kind of things when I watch this. Now, I'm also something of a Bitcoin expert. And so when I hear a politician talking about Bitcoin, I get that same kind of like, gosh, that's not really how that works. But it's a pander, and they're going to pander in order to get elected. I'll tell you what, right now, RFK doesn't give a rat's ass about Bitcoin at all. He doesn't care. He cares about your votes. I also don't think he actually cares about COVID. If you look at his background, he is a very, very successful. What's the right term for it? I always want to say ambulance chaser, but he's an attorney. He's like a personal injury attorney essentially. But he helped sue Big Pharma many years ago. Now that opened his eyes to, hey, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in Big Pharma, but let's not act like he doesn't have some kind of major financial incentive to parlay himself into being a massive political figure as someone who stood up against Big Pharma, so that even if he doesn't get elected or any of these things, he has now raised the value of his reputation to go out there and probably sue for COVID vaccine injuries. If I had to guess, that's what he's actually up to. Like, who cares if he gets the presidency? He can earn $1 billion and nail down possibly the biggest lawsuit of all time if he can successfully spin this into, hey, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and these big companies colluded to harm people with this vaccine. So did they? I'm going to leave that up to everybody else to decide, but I'm guessing that's what RFK is thinking about. Now, as for Vivek, I have not looked into him nearly as much. I like him. I like the fact that he's young. I like the way that he talks. He seems to be a fresh face on some of these things, but same kind of thing. He's a politician. I don't expect him to understand Bitcoin any more than I would expect, Matt Damon to actually understand how to handle a firearm. And for the same reason, they're actors, all of them. I think that's it. I'm going to leave it there, and we're going to move on. So next.